Well, thank you one and all for joining me again today. This is your host, idjester, and we are talking about the Advanced Squad Leader rules in about 15 minutes. Although I have a feeling this episode is going to be a little bit longer because we've got a lot to cover. It's been a while since I've been able to post a video. As I mentioned at the end of last episode, it was going to be the end of July. I've been having some internet issues. Well, Time Warner decided to come out today, and hopefully they got everything working. And so now I can get this video uploaded to you. And I was on vacation for a while, so it's been a while. So we're going to get back into Part 16, Line of Sight. And this time we're going to talk about Section A of the Rule Book, Subsection 6.4. What I think I'm going to do from now on is, instead of actually reading through all the different rules we're going to be covering, I'm going to basically just cover the parts that I've got highlighted, and I want you guys to go ahead and read the rest of the rule if you have to put the video on pause or whatever, because there's probably some other stuff in there that will have exceptions and stuff that you might need to know about, but I'm just don't feel that those are important enough to really bring them into what we're trying to learn during the episode. So go ahead and put this video on pause. You can read through the rules, but I'm going to focus from now on, when I read through the rules, just on the parts that I feel are the core of what the rules are that we are going over. So this episode, Section A of the Rule Book, subsection 6.4, Blind Hexes. Blind hexes are going to be created anytime you have a obstacle between the target and the fire, and we're talking about different levels of obstacles and the height of the target and the fire. And this is going to basically create a little shroud of darkness behind the obstacles that are going to be out of line of sight. And of course, this blind area can increase as the range to the obstacle increases and or decrease according to the extent of the elevation advantage over the obstacle. Section 6.41, for every multiple of 5 hexes, fractions rounded down to a full level obstacle, you're going to increase by 1 the number of blind hexes created by that obstacle. And then section 6.42, for every full level elevation advantage greater than 1 level over the obstacle. Greater than 1 level over the obstacle. That is the most important part of this. You're going to decrease the number of blind hexes created by that obstacle by 1. And again, we're going to decrease the number of blind hexes created. So we've got a couple things we're going to be worried about in blind hexes. And we have one more rule we're going to look at. We're going to save that for the end because that's going to be a little bit different, and we're going to show you that towards the end of this episode. So I created at the end of last episode a little blind hex formula, and I've kind of changed things now in my formula to kind of help you explain really how easy blind hex is. So there's basically 3 things that we're going to determine when we're deciding how many blind hexes there are. We're going to determine the range. And when we look at the range, we're going to look at the difference, the range between the fire to the obstacle. And we're going to be looking at the obstacle, not the target. So that's very important to understand that you're not counting the number of spaces to the target. You're counting the number of spaces to the obstacle. The second thing we're going to look at is what I call height advantage. Height advantage is the difference in height between the fire and the obstacle. It must be higher than 1 difference to gain height advantage. And basically, range and height advantage are basically the 2 rules that we just covered here at the beginning, section 6.41 and section 6.42. And remember, there's always 1 blind hex, always. So you're always going to have at least 1 blind hexes, and then that number can go up based upon this rule, and of course this, but we'll get to that here in a little bit. So we're going to focus right now on the first 2 parts of my little formula to help you explain how things are and how many blind hexes we have. So my blind hex formula is actually based upon section 1, which is your range, section 2, which is your height advantage, and then section 3, which is the target height. And like I said, we're going to get to that in a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is calculate the range from the fire to the obstacle and create this part of our little formula, which is the first part. It's 1 plus r/5, and mostly what you can already figure it out is it's 1 because you always have at least one blind hex, and then you're going to add in any extra hexes that will have range. And then the second part of the equation here is going to be the height advantage, which is the h minus o minus 1. And of course this is going to be the height that you're shooting from. You're going to subtract the object height, and then of course you're going to subtract 1 to it, because remember, you only get an advantage when you're greater than 1 level over the obstacle. Remember, I said that was the most important part of that rule. So bear with me now. Let's go through this and explain what exactly I'm talking about. Well, here's just a little example down here. We got some units here. They're on different elevations, and we got a little obstacle here in the way, and we have a little target here. Well, everything that goes into calculating how many blind hexes there are is basically your height advantage and your range, and basically what that represents is the different angle that your unit's going to be able to see the over the target or over the obstacle to try and see your target. You can see here I've got a little a triangle here that kind of represents what I'm talking about. As I have range here, you can see our angle is kind of I don't know, maybe a 15-20 degrees angle. And you can see that as I come closer, you're going to see right there, I still have it on the same vertices down at the bottom. You can see it's the same vertex, but you can see that that light blue area is actually above the dark blue area, and that shows us exactly how much more area we can see because we're closer. So obviously the closer you get, the more light blue area, the more you're going to be able to see. The farther you go back, the less area you're going to be able to see. And that's represented in the rules by that section that talks about, let's see what that section number was again. Apologize there. That is section 6.41. For every multiple of 5 hexes, fractions rounded down to a full level obstacle, increase by 1 the number of blind hexes created by that obstacle. So let's go back to our little representation here. Again, as I come closer, you can see that I'm going to have a lot more area that I'm going to be able to see, and there's going to be less blind area behind that obstacle. So for our first part of our formula, it's basically 1, because we're always going to have at least 1 blind hex. If this unit is standing directly behind this obstacle, he's going to be in a blind hex. So you don't even have to calculate. You don't have to figure out anything. The only time you have to really calculate and figure anything out is when they have 2 spaces or 3 spaces or 4 spaces behind an obstacle. So let's just assume this guy is right there. So first part of our formula is always going to be 1 plus our range. So obviously if we're at a range 1, 2, 3, or 4, we're not going to add anything at all. It's just going to be 1. If we're at range 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, we're going to add 1. If we're at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, we're going to add 2. If we're at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, we're going to add 3, etc., etc., etc. So every full multiple of 5, you're basically going to add 1 to our range. So in this case, if we're shooting at a target that's 6 spaces away, I can quickly say 1 plus 1 is 2. That's the first part of our formula right there, is 2. So that's what you want to do first and foremost, is figure out the range. Again, that is from the firing unit to the obstacle, not to the target you're trying to shoot at, but to the obstacle. And you're just going to find a base number here. 1 plus 1, 1 plus 2, 1 plus 3, 1 plus 4, whatever you end up getting. You're going to have that number in your head, And the second part of the formula is going to be a little more complicated, but it's really not that bad. It's h minus o, and then you're going to be minus 1. And basically what that represents is our height advantage we talked about. So let's look at what we're talking about when we see height advantage here. Let's go down to the right page here. Height advantage is basically represented here. You can see as, let's actually go back to our other screen here where I was showing you the range. You can see that when I was doing the same thing with the range, we're going to do the same thing with the height advantage. You can see that the higher I go, the more area that becomes light blue there, and I'm going to be able to see more and more stuff. And of course, as I do this and I move closer, you can see that we're going to have an even more and more blue area. So things that are going to make very shallow blind hexes is being closer to your object and being higher. And things that are going to make a lot of blind hexes are obviously going to be lower and farther away. They're going to create lots of blind hexes. So the higher you are and the closer you are, the less blind hexes you will have, and the farther away you are and the lower you are, the more blind hexes will be created. And when I mean lower, I don't necessarily mean lower. I mean the difference between your elevation and the elevation of your obstacle. So let's come down to our page now. You can see here we have a German unit, Russian unit. He's at level 2. We have a level 1 obstacle. So level 2 height versus a level 1 obstacle, is that greater than 1? No. Remember, where am I getting this greater than 1? Again, we're going to go back to our rule here. As I mentioned in the very beginning of this episode, the most important part of this is for every full level elevation advantage greater than 1 level over the obstacle. So you have to be at least 1 level, greater than 1 level, to get the height advantage. So in this case, I'm not greater than 1 height advantage, so I'm going to have no advantage whatsoever. And so basically that part of the formula is nothing. So that in this case I have a level 2 versus a level 1, no height advantage. Same representation if I have a level 3 and I have a level 2 obstacle. It's the same thing. 3 minus 2 is 1. Is that greater than 1? No, it's not greater than 1. Same thing if I have 4 and 3. Let's just copy and paste these really quickly. If I have a 4 and a 3, 4, 3, is that greater than 1? No. So it doesn't matter if it's 2 versus 1 or 3 versus 2 or 4 versus 3. In that case, you have no advantage whatsoever, and so you're not going to have any height advantage. Let's go down to our second representation here. Level 3 height, you see level 3, we have a level 1 obstacle. Is that greater than 1? So 3 minus 1 is 2. Is that greater than 1? Yes, absolutely it is. So we have an advantage. So we have a height level of 3. We have an obstacle level of 1, which is going to give us 2. And then to that number, we're going to subtract 1. Because remember, we don't get an advantage unless we're at least 1 level higher than that. So 3 minus 1 is 2. And then we subtract 1 to it. So we get a final total of 1, and we're going to subtract 1 from the number of blind hexes that are being created. Same thing down here, level 4 height versus a level 1 obstacle. See, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a level 1 obstacle. Is that greater than 1? Well, 4 minus 1 is greater than 1, yes. So we have a height of 4. Our obstacle is level 1. So that gives us a 3. Remember, we don't get an advantage, so we have to, unless we're at least 1, so we subtract 1 from it. We end up getting 2. Subtract 2 from the number of blind hexes you create. And our last example here, we have a level 4, we have a level 2, and that represents, is that greater than level 1? Is that greater than 1? Yes, it is again. So we are going to obviously have some kind of adjustment here. So we have a height of 4. We're going to subtract 2 to it. We get 2. And then we subtract 1 because we don't get an advantage unless we're at least 1 level higher. And we're going to get 1. So we're going to subtract 1 from the number of blind hexes. So with those two numbers and understanding those two parts of our equation, 95% of all of your blind hexes will be taken care of with just that part. 9 times out of 10, you're going to not need this last part. And that's why I kind of left it to the end, because I don't want to complicate too many things. Let's just focus in on part 1 and part 2. We'll worry about part 3 here in a minute. So again, we always have at least one blind hex. We're going to find our range, divide it by 5. We're going to add these numbers together. And then all we're going to do is we're going to find our height of our object. The height of the fire. We're going to subtract the height of the object. And then we're going to subtract 1 to it, because you don't get an advantage unless you're at least one level higher. And then with those two numbers combined, you're probably going to come up with the number of blind hexes. We'll show you a quick representation of a couple examples here. So we have this German unit right here, and he's trying to shoot over this obstacle right here. And so quickly and easily you can count the number of spaces away. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, we're not counting to our target, we're counting to our obstacle. So 4 spaces. 4 is no bonus. We don't add anything to it, but we always have at least 1 blind hexes, so we have a total of 1. Height advantage, we have 2 spaces here. Height of 2. Obstacle is a 1. So 2 minus 1 is 1. Is that greater than 1? No, it's not. So height advantage is 0. Number of blind hexes created is 1 plus 0 equals 1. So this one will be, if the unit was in this hex, obviously it would be in the blind hex. This unit and this unit obviously can be targeted by this unit as long as it has range to those hexes. Let's look at this unit shooting over this obstacle. Same thing, same calculations. We're going to figure it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spaces. 8 is going to be 1 because we're greater than 5 spaces away. 1 because we always have at least 1 blind hex, and that's going to give us a total of 2. Our height advantage is 2 minus 1 is 1. Is 1 greater than 1? No, it's not, so we have no height advantage. So number of blind hexes is going to be 2 plus 0 equals 1. 2 plus 0 equals 1. Duh, no. 2 plus 0 is still 2 in my book. So quickly and easily, 99% of your calculations are going to be done this way. And it's going to be very easy to do. And now let's talk about what will happen in the last situation that might come up occasionally, but not very often. And that is if the hex behind the obstacle is at a lower level than the elevation of the hex containing the obstacle, the difference in elevation of these two hexes is added to the number of blind hexes. And the exact opposite down here. If the hex behind the obstacle is at a higher level than the elevation of the hex containing the obstacle, the difference in elevation of these two hexes is subtracted from the number of blind hexes. Now they calculate things slightly different than I do, so I'm going to show you exactly what this represents and what this means. Let's keep scrolling down through all of our wonderful little things here. Here we go. So basically here's a little representation of what that rule is talking about. When we're looking at our little calculations here for our triangle and our line of sight, you will see that we are talking about a line on the bottom that is parallel with the object and the unit. So we can calculate and figure out how many blind hexes we're doing based upon that angle never changing whatsoever. The only thing that's changing is our height and our range, but nothing else. In the rare situation that something happens where the unit is lower than the actual level of the obstacle, in that case you're going to add or subtract to the number of blind hexes created. And this shows you how to do it. If the unit is at a lower level, you're going to add to the number of blind hexes For -1 level, you're going to add 1 blind hex. If it's -2 levels, you're going to add +2 blind hexes. It's the level 3, it's going to add 3 blind hexes. So if it's a lower level, you're going to add the difference in level to the number of blind hexes that are created. So for example, if this unit is 1 level lower, if he's 2 levels lower, you can see it's going to even be tougher for the unit to see if he's 2 levels lower. If he's 1 level lower, or 2 levels lower, or 3 levels lower, or whatever. Okay? So that is how you figure out that third part of our formula, which is plus or minus t, and t is going to be the representation of our target height. Same thing, but opposite end of the spectrum is this part over here, which is going to be sometimes if you have a unit that is up at a higher level than the actual obstacle. In that case, it's going to be the exact opposite. Gosh, I should have checked my spelling. Higher level than you're going to subtract to the number of blind hexes. So if it's at +1 level, you're going to subtract 1 blind hex. If it's at +2 levels, you're going to add +2 blind hexes, etc., etc. So obviously, the higher the unit is, the easier it's going to be able to see from behind it. And again, that is our last part of our equation. And like I said, this isn't going to happen very often. Once in a while, you'll have a unit that might be hiding behind the edge of a hill, and you'll have a hill in the way, and so your unit will be at level 0, and the hill will be at level 1, and so you'll have to add or subtract the difference in height to your blind hexes that are created. But as I talked about, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to need this part because normally everything's going to kind of be at the same level. And again, that's all based upon our blind hex calculations are based upon everything being at the same level, the target and the obstacle as well. So let's look at some quick examples, some more here of what we're talking about. Here we got a really good situation that's going on here. This German unit is going to fire way down here at this Russian unit. And again, some of my props here aren't to exact scale, so it might look a little weird and everything, but just bear with me here. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to calculate a range. 5, 10, 11, 12. So we're 12 spaces away to this. And I can quickly see that. So we can just count the number of red hexes, 1, 2. And of course we're going to add those 2 hexes to our 1 we always have. So we get a 3. So the first thing we're going to come up with is 3. We're going to subtract the difference in our height advantage now. Our height advantage, we are level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Our obstacle is at level 1, 2, 3. So 5 minus 3 is 2. And to that, we always subtract the 1 difference. So is 2 greater than 1? Yes, it is. How much bigger than 1 is it? It's 1. So right now I can quickly and easily see that in a normal situation, this unit here would be at a range, 3 blind hexes for range. I'm going to subtract 1 because of the height advantage, so I can quickly and easily, under normal situations, say, well, there's 2 blind hexes. This guy cannot see the Russian unit, assuming he had range to that unit. But in our example here, this unit happens to be at a level 1 height. So remember, if it's up a level, we're going to actually subtract to the total blind hexes. So we have our total of 3 blind hexes. From that, we're going to subtract 1 for our height advantage, and we're going to subtract 1 because of the target height, and we come up with a total of 3 minus 1 equals 1. So in this situation, there is 1 blind hex, and this German unit could shoot this Russian unit and have line of sight to it, assuming, again, he has range to it. So that's as easy as it comes. It's really not as complicated if you just calculate it and figure it out that way. You're just going to find the range, and you're going to add in 1 to that, because you always have at least 1. So you're going to have 1 plus 1, 1 plus 2, 1 plus 3, whatever. From that, you're going to subtract the height advantage. Again, if you're getting up higher, you're going to get to lower those blind hexes farther and farther down. The higher you can get above the obstacle, the shorter the blind hexes will be. And then lastly, all you're going to do is add or subtract if the unit is lower or higher than the actual terrain that is on the obstacle itself. So let's look at a couple examples here. Let's quickly calculate some things out here. Let's just say that this German unit is trying to shoot over this obstacle. Let's figure out what hexes he can hit. So we're just going to count hexes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hexes. So right off the bat, I know that's 2. 2. And now the height difference is 3 minus 2 is 1. Is 1 greater than 1? No, it's not. So he has no height advantage. So there's 2 blind hexes behind this. So this unit's safe. This unit is safe. This unit could be attacked, assuming the German unit had range to it. In this case, let's have the Russians fire back. Let's say that this Russian is going to fire over this obstacle and see what he can see behind it. So all we're going to do is calculate a range. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 spaces. I know right in the top of my head, it's 2 plus 1, because you always have 1, is 3. So right now I'm looking at 3 blind hexes. Let's look at the height differential. Height differential, he is at level 3. This unit is at level 2. So 3 minus 2 is 1. Is 1 greater than 1? No, it's not. So he gets no height advantage. So there will be 3 blind hexes created behind this obstacle. So any unit in this hex, this hex, and or this hex would be safe whatsoever from this Russian unit shooting. Let's look at this unit shooting over this obstacle. How many blind hexes do you think there possibly is between this unit and this obstacle? I'll give you a second to think about that. This unit right here shooting over this obstacle. Put it on pause if you want right now as you think about how many blind hexes are being created. And the answer is coming right now. So, how many blind hexes is created? How many did you come up with? Did you come up with 1, 2, 3? And that is all incorrect, folks. Sorry about that. Remember what we talked about last episode. We have to have height advantage over our obstacles all the way around. You can see that he is a level 2 obstacle. He's at a level 2 obstacle. And this here is also a level 2 obstacle. So because of the Grand Canyon effect, this unit here cannot shoot at anything lower than level 2. This is at level 1, this is at level 1, level 1, level 0, level 0, level 0. So the only unit this unit could shoot at would possibly be this one. Remember the Grand Canyon effect? Unless you're on the very edge, you can't see down into the hole. So that was a trick question. But we've already calculated how many spaces it will be for this hex here from this unit. But let's try this unit to shooting over this obstacle right here. So this unit here shooting over this obstacle is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hexes. 8 is 2. I know that. It's 1 because you always have 1, and it's 1 because of the range. So it's 2 blind hexes. Now let's look at height differential. Height differential is 3 minus 1 is 2. Is 2 greater than 1? Yes. How many is it greater than 1? It's 1. So I'm going to subtract 1 from the amount of blind hexes. So we had 2 hexes because of the range. We're going to subtract 1 because of the height differential. We're going to end up with 1 blind hex. So this German unit cannot shoot at this guy here because of the blind hex. But this guy and this guy are in line of sight and can be shot. Let me make sure I calculate that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, that's 2. He's got a height advantage of 1, so I'm going to subtract 1. So 2 minus 1 is 1 blind hex. So this guy's safe. This guy and this guy can be targeted. That's as simple as it goes. And like I said, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to have to worry about the height differential. But if you do, if it's up higher, you're going to subtract blind hexes. And if it's lower, which is 9 times out of 10, it'll be lower, you're going to be subtracting, you're going to be adding the number of blind hexes to that. So because I calculate things slightly different than the actual rule book, the rule is actually exactly opposite of the way I calculate things. So you can do it however you want. I'm just trying to give you the best way to figure out blind hexes. So thanks for being patient with me and understanding that had some issues with the old internet there. Hopefully those issues have been resolved. I've been back from vacation now, and I feel pretty confident that I can upload some videos, although I was talking to the neighbor tonight and her internet is now out, so I'm wondering if they did something with ours and replaced our internet connection out at the box in the neighbor's yard with ours, and who knows what will happen from here. But for right now, we got internet, so I'm going to upload this to you guys, and we'll see you for the next episode. So thanks for being patient, and we'll see you then. Until the next time, we'll see you soon.